McDonald. I want to welcome you here to the Taneytown Museum today, and you've agreed, and we think it's a pleasure that you're going to give us your oral history of your growing up and the memories of Taneytown. Can you just state your full name, please?
Donald Richard Lawyer.
Yes. And when were you born?
I was born in 1936.
Okay. And how long have you been a resident of Carroll County?
All my life, Carroll County.
And in Taneytown?
I moved to Taneytown in 1957.
Okay, so maybe you can just take us through your growing up in Taneytown and Carroll County.
Well, I was born on A.W. Feaser's farm in Mayberry. I went to Taneytown High School from the 1st to the 12th grade. And after that, I went in the service for 3 years. And when I came back, I worked for A.W. Feaser in the summer.
On the farm?
On the farm and the factory. And then I worked for 3M Advertising for a year. And then I secured a job in the Bernie Trust Company in Taneytown. And I worked there for 37 years before I retired.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about working on the farm and in the factory for A.W. Feaser?
Give you a little history of the A.W. Feaser Company. They had 3 canning factories, one in Silver Run, one in Keymar, and one in Taneytown. And they also had 15 farms. Their main products were corn, peas, and tomatoes, which they canned at the factories. And of course, as a kid growing up, we all worked on the farms during the summer. And most of the time when we got 16, we went to work in the factory because it paid more.
So when you were in the factory, what kind of work was it?
I worked on the huskers and also on the silking machines for the for the corn. In the pea season, I worked at the vineries where they shelled all the peas from the pods through the. And I also did some work in the factory as the cans were filled. We put them in the big round cookers to be processed, and all different kind of jobs in the factory and also on the farm.
Do you know about how many people were in the factory working?
In the summertime, there was probably over 250 total employees for the whole company. In the wintertime, there was probably 60 full-time employees working on the farms. In the fall, they would go to different sales and buy young beef cattle and put them on the farms for the farmers to tend to during the winter and fatten them up, and then they'd sell them for beef. And of course, they've used the pea vines and the corn husks from the canning factories to feed the cattle on the farm with a mixture of other supplements.
What did you do with the money that you earned in the summer when you were 16?
Saved it. Gas for car.
And did you have a car?
I did it after I was about 17 years old. I shared it with my brother.
What was there to do in Carroll County when you were 16?
Oh.
I mean, what did you do?
Well, we had the bowling alley down here at Rainbow, the skating rink. We had the drive-in movie out here at the end of town. And of course, all the sports in high school, from the time you started in the fall until summer, was involved in sports.
What kind of sports did you play?
I played soccer, I played basketball, I ran track, and also played basketball.
So what happened once you got your other job at the trust company?
Well, I started out as a teller and worked my way up, and I had different jobs in the bank. One time I was a security officer, another time I was a trust officer, and when I ended up, I was in charge of all the work in the bookkeeping and all that, the operations of the computers and everything like that.
Can you tell me sort of like what life was like then at the beginning when you were just working at the bank?
Well, just working at the bank, I just got married. I lived next door, so I'd come out one door in the morning and go in the other. Of course, you didn't have the hours that you do now. You were off by 3:30. And of course, there were many changes in the bank from the time that I started. Nothing was computerized when I started. You had to do everything manual. So it was interesting.
Did you like it better once it became sort of automatic? Or
Yes,
yes,
I
you
did, because end of year and end of quarter and things like that, all you had to do was press a button and basically had things, and it was easier to balance out every day with all the transactions too. So that was a big help.
What about in terms of the population over time? I mean,
Well, over time, when I first started working in the bank, when it was still the Bernie Trust Company, you knew every customer that come in the bank and where they lived and their family and everything. Towards the end, you were lucky if you knew anybody when they came in, because all the people moving into town, and it was kind of hard to keep track of everybody.
how did you feel in terms of the changes that brought?
Well, you weren't quite as personal with everybody as what you were back when I first started. Of course, you always had customers that didn't matter what they wanted, they always came to you in the bank. They had their personal people that they wanted to see in the bank when they came in.
What about sort of life after work? What did you and your wife do? And did your wife work?
Yes, my wife has her own beauty shop, and she's still working after 50-some years, a couple days a week. And we did some traveling and family, things like that.
What about thinking back in terms of your grandparents or your great-grandparents? Did you know?
Yes, I knew both sets of my grandparents. Of course, my grandmother on the lawyer side was a sister to A.W. Feeser. And my grandfather on the other side, he was in charge of the bank at Union Mills, which later became Westminster Trust Company. So kind of followed in his. And I had another cousin who was, I'm sure you know him, John Schaefer, which was president of Westminster Trust Company.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Mayberry Farm?
Okay, the Mayberry Farm was one of the biggest farms that the Feeser Company had. I was born in the original house there, and after about a year and a half, they built another new house down the road a little bit, and that's where I grew up. And they had, the big house was converted into two apartments, and then they had another small house on the farm. And one of A.W. Feeser's real joys was a herd of Ayrshire cattle. And he would come over and check on them all the time. I remember him when I was small, and in 1943 or 4, they had a dispersal sale of all the Ayrshire cattle, and people came from all over the United States to attend that. And he wasn't able to be up where the sale was, and he sat down in our house in the living room, and he had a speaker set up so he could hear what was going on. And then after that, on that farm, he started raising purebred Angus cattle. So there was always cattle on our farm.
Were there lots of dairy farms in this area at that time?
There was many dairy farms. Mm-hmm. I think every farm had dairy cattle.
Mm-hmm. So it was mostly corn in terms of the farms. And
you mean the Feeser farm? Mm-hmm. Corn, peas, and tomatoes was their main thing. Of course, they raised wheat and hay, and of course, you had straw also.
Mm-hmm. Were your grandparents from this area? I know you said
Yes,
that on your mother's side they related
all,
to the
all,
Feesers.
all of them were in the Silver Run Union Mills area.
Silver Run. So you worked for the bank, you worked for the Feesers.
Yes.
Anywhere else that you, what church?
I go to the Lutheran Church in Silver Run.
Okay. And what about service clubs?
Well, the only service club I belonged to was the Taneytown Lions Club. And coming this October, I'll have 58 years of perfect attendance with him. And I've served in all the offices, I think, except secretary. And finally got rid of the treasurer's job after about 30 years. And I also served 2 or 3 different times on the district level.
Anything else that you can remember that you particularly want to tell us about today in terms of the town and your growing up and memories of the people that you've known?
Well, met many great people working in the bank, and of course, classmates and everything in high school. We were a very small class, and we knew everyone real well. There's only 32 in our class.
Yeah. So Taneytown is a good place to live in.
It sure was.
Yeah. Well, is it still?
Yes, I think it's still a good place to live. You get a lot of people moving in from the city and from out of the county, and you don't know your neighbors like you used to. And a lot of the people don't have the pride that the people in Taneytown had. I know on Saturday morning, everybody was out sweeping their sidewalks and the gutters in front of their houses and washing them down, but you don't see that anymore.
Everybody's either on their cell phones or
Right.
taken off to go do something, right? Yeah.
You know, all the people now want the government to do things for them.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you today. And I know we have another gentleman waiting, but if there are other things that you want to talk about and you remember, or that Peggy...
A little bit about the Feeser factory, or what they did, because I worked either on the farm or in the factory until I joined the service. And they had the regular people living on the farms who worked full time, and then this is why they got the beef cattle in the fall, to give those farmers something to do over the winter. And they had quite a few head of cattle, and of course, like I said before, they fed them the pea vines and the corn husk and cobs, along with other supplements during the winter.
Right. It sounds like they were very smart about using everything, and they were good business people.
And of course, A.W. Feeser was the first president of the company. Paul Lawyer was the second one, And then John Chenoweth was the president when the company disbanded. So
Were they originally from Taneytown or Carroll County or not?
Mr. Feeser was originally from the Littlestown area. And he started when he was 25 years old building barns. And then in 1917, he built the first factory in Silver Run. And I think it was 1920 or 24 that he built in Taneytown and Kemar.
Very interesting.
He was a real gentleman. Of course, I was only 7, 8 years old when he passed away, but he was always a real gentleman.
Okay.
Is that it?
I want to thank you very much for sharing.
Right, you're welcome.